You are listening to the third season of my podcast, which will be an English special this time, called the Money and Meaning Podcast. The idea stays the same. I'm going to interview all kinds of experts from different fields about the relationship between money and meaning, and also what lessons they've learned so far from life. Are you curious about how you can use money to become happier and live a more meaningful life? Then this podcast is really something for you. I am Emma Hafkamp, clinical psychologist, coach and yoga therapist, and founder of Lux. I help leaders to a lighter, happier life full of meaning and purpose. And for you, I host this podcast. I wish you a lot of inspiration. Welcome to the first episode of the Money and Meaning podcast, in which Ken Okoroafor is interviewed. Ken is born in Nigeria, which made him grow up like a resilient, problem-solving man with a healthy appetite for risk-taking, as he says so himself. He's co-founder and CEO of The Humble Penny and the Financial Joy Academy, together with his wife. They live a financially independent life in London with their 2 sons. Coming from a life with a huge lack of money to being financially free. How did Ken do this? And what were the specific challenges as an immigrant? What's financial joy according to Ken, and how can you achieve this? And in what way is this joy connected to a meaningful life? Ken is giving answers to these and more questions in this episode. So very welcome, Ken, in the Money and Meaning podcast. For obviously our Dutch listeners who will also listen to these English episodes, but also probably for some English listeners. Can you start with introducing yourself by saying who you are and maybe also a bit more about what you do at this moment?
Okay, so hi everybody. My name is Ken Okoroafor. I'm the co-founder of The Humble Penny, a platform that I run with my incredible wife, Mary. And The Humble Penny is started life as a blog, but it has since just grown into other things. You know, it's become a personal finance brand that helps people. Our mission is to help millions of people to create financial joy in their lives. That's our goal. And we want to help people take control of their finances. We want to help them grow their money and ultimately to become financially independent. That's our mission. It started life in 2017. I used to work as a chief financial officer in venture capital in London. But in April 2020, I quit my job and took the leap to focus on this mission of running The Humble Penny to serve our various audiences and help people become better at money. I also run, I should mention, a sister brand called Financial Joy Academy, which is another academy, and the mission there is literally to we're trying to help 10,000 families to become financially independent this decade. So that's why we created that platform. But those 2 things, among many other things, are the things that I focus on at the moment.
Yeah. So there are already a lot of questions I have in my mind to ask you about it. But first, can you also tell me a little bit more about what you do or who you are besides the Humble Penny and the Academy?
So I'm a married father of 2 boys. Our sons are aged 9 and 7. And I began life in the UK. I immigrated here when I was 14 and started life here, you know, trying to find my feet with my parents and my siblings. And for me, that journey has been about discovery, trying to find, you know, a new culture, new people, new everything, new weather, new everything. New language, pretty much. I had to learn English in the way I speak at the moment. This is not how I sounded when I was 14. So for me, the journey has been about kind of building my career and trying to navigate the subject of money. But a big part of my journey has also been about doing meaningful work. And really, I've got a heart for trying to help people, particularly people who are maybe struggling through life and trying to get through life, or people who just want a particular lifestyle for themselves. So a lot of my time outside of the Humble Penny is spent traveling. I love traveling and going around the world with my wife and my kids. I enjoy sports. I like watching a nice show on TV, maybe on Netflix or something like that. And really just having time outdoors, being outdoors, trying to do some fun things. I'm really trying to live out the life that I feel I've always wanted to create for myself, which is a life of more flexibility, more fun, more love, more family, those kind of things. So those are the things that occupy my time. And learning. I spend a lot of time reading and learning.
Right. Yeah.
And learning new things. Yeah. So.
And I guess especially the flexibility came in early when you came as an immigrant in London. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that time was for you? Because you already said like everything was new, but how do you cope with that?
Oh, it was extremely difficult for me because it was the year was 1998. That's when I moved here, and it was in the summer in June in London. And I'd never been on an aeroplane before, so this is my first time, and coming to the country. But the difficulty was when we moved here with limited paperwork. It's probably a better way to put it. So we didn't have all the things to be able to do what everybody else does, like get a job or claim benefits or use the health service and stuff like that. So that made life even more difficult. And also there was a racial dimension, being a young Black immigrant in London in the late 90s was not the easiest thing. So I struggled a lot with being pushed around and bullied by various people, and also trying to adapt, So for me, a lot of my life back then was about trying to fit in, trying to figure out how does this culture of this country work? How does everything work? And how do I fit in and not just survive, but one day thrive? So I wanted to initially survive. How do we actually survive in this place and one day thrive? So if I look at my life over the last 20 years, for example, I'd say that the first 10 years of my life here was about survival. It was about trying to find my way, doing various manual jobs, cleaning and various things to make some extra money. And then the next decade is my decade of thriving, because that initial 10 years of doing all these various works and educating myself, going into the school system and stuff was a very good foundation for what would come later on, which was me starting to then take a bit more risk, become more enterprising, more entrepreneurial, progressing my career and stuff, which is, ended up becoming in finance. And on a personal level, becoming more confident as an individual, learning more about myself, meeting my wife, getting married, and and many years later, having children and stuff like that. So this is how I would split the journey. I'd say the first 10 years here were just ridiculously challenging. And the thing is as well, when you have situations like that, you don't have many people you can talk to about it, because you feel a lot of shame and a lot of loneliness, because not many people understand your challenges and the dimensions that what you're navigating. But I'm quite happy to be here today, many years later, to be able to talk about it.
So what helped you then in those moments where you felt lonely or that you felt that it's just a harsh world around me?
Things that helped were some friendships. So I formed one or two friendships that were very helpful. And interestingly, they were in a quite similar position to me. They didn't have, they had very little money or no money. But the friendship was very helpful, because I felt like I had an ally, I had someone who I could relate to and play with, and play football or something. And, and just hang out with. The other thing that really helped me was my family. So because we were all in the same situation, having family members who are united together, and when there's unity in a family, that unity really takes everybody along, takes everybody forward,
Right.
And so for me, the unity in the family helped a lot because we were all in the same situation. We were all in the same struggles, but we felt like one day we're going to make it, one day we're going to get out of this situation. But we didn't know one day could be 10 years, 20 years, we had no idea.
No.
So having a united family was very important. And the third thing I'd say is my faith. I have a Christian faith. I know not many people have faiths, have anything they believe in these days, and and that's fine. But for me, it's always helped me to believe that there was something much bigger than just what I can see around me. I'm almost a much more spiritual dimension to life. So for me, I always felt that having faith in my life, believing that the future will be much brighter, gave me much more belief, self-belief, and much more determination that I can find a way out of this situation, and that the right doors will open as time passed.
Yeah.
So that's the third thing that really helps me in those situations.
Yeah. And another question that comes up in my mind is, you talk about the first years that you really focus on how can I adapt, how can I learn this culture and make sure that I do everything that fits in there. And then at the same time, how can you then also keep your own identity, or is that something that comes back later?
Yes, so that's interesting because I was on a search of trying to fit in, as I mentioned before. And a lot of that meant trying to become much more British and understand how British culture worked, and what to say and what not to say, when to say stuff, and and although that's been great and that was a survival tool for me, what I've then realized much later on was that it was at the detriment of my own culture, my own identity in many ways, because and this is because back then being African was not cool. Right now you turn on the radio, you can listen to Afrobeat, you can hear Burna Boy, you can hear all these world famous musicians, African, Nigerian music. I'm of Nigerian heritage. The music and all those various other aspects of our culture has become global, but back then it was not cool at all to be African. If you said you were African, people were saying to you, go back to your country, or, so it was not cool at all. But I think in the last few years, probably in the last 5 to 10 years, I've been on a search of almost re-embracing my own identity, my own heritage, whilst also understanding that I've lived in this country now for 23 years, so I've now got this dual heritage where, I'm in my late 30s now, and a lot of my 14 years of my life was in another continent, in another country. And then now 23 or so years of my life is now in this country. So it's about finding that balance whilst also being completely true to myself, really understanding that where I've come from really, really matters. The culture that I was brought up in really matters. And who I am, my values, my value system, what I think is important, is very important, because it's what determines my character, determines my reputation, determines, the level of success I might have one day in the future, and all those various things. So to your point, that journey actually came later, once I'd got past survival, and I was now focused on how do we now thrive? How do we go beyond survival? How do we become, how do we achieve some of the things we've always wanted to achieve? That search for embracing identity became a much more important topic.
Yeah, yeah. And most people when they hear survival, they think then, oh, that's money wise. Like you can get out of the survival mode when you have enough money. But I hear you also talking about a lot of other aspects that come to that.
Mm.
But how was it money wise for you? Was that also related?
Yeah, so we had no money at all. So this is a big problem because it meant that having no money is a very difficult thing because you know it means that you might not be able to turn on your gas or
Mm.
your heating, or you might not be able to eat good quality food. You might have to just buy cheap junk food, which again is bad for you. Becomes very unhealthy in the long term.
Mm.
Or it might just mean that you don't have experiences. Like I wasn't able to go on holiday,
Mm.
go abroad, um, for many, many, many years, many years, because there was no money for that. So, and plus I was still sorting out my residency and, all those things. So there were many competing um, things that meant that I had to prioritize just getting by. And so for me, this is another reason why this is interesting that I run the Humble Penny today, because and helping other people
Yeah.
win with their money, because for me this subject of money was so important because
Mm.
I'd come from lack, having
Mm.
no money at all. And I had to figure out over time, how do you, like, the people who are financially secure or financially independent, how did they get there?
Mhm.
How, what, how do you get there one day? What do you have to do to get there? So a big
And
part of
did you
that.
also then have an image of how life would be or how you would be when
Yes,
you reach that level?
correct. Yeah.
What was the dream?
So for me, the image was this. I wanted, and my wife and I did this together. We wanted, first of all, we wanted a house that
Mm.
has its own door. So by that I mean I could walk to the house, and I didn't need to climb any stairs or take any elevators or lifts. I could just walk to the house and open the door. For me, this was a big dream. I wanted to be able to become a homeowner and own my own home. But the other thing was, I also wanted a family. I wanted to have raise children, but without financial stress, without always struggling or, always arguing. I saw my parents argue a lot about money, and
Mm.
I didn't want to repeat that pattern of, you know, lack and difficulty. The other thing I wanted as a vision was I wanted to be in much more control of my own time. I wanted to be
Mm.
able to do what I wanted, when I wanted, and I also wanted to, um, you know, earn an income from different sources. I didn't want to just rely on just my salary, from my day job. I wanted the opportunity to earn an income from maybe some assets and stuff like that. So,
Mhm.
but overall, what I truly wanted was what I refer to as a life of financial joy. A life of financial joy for me is a life of much more intention and flexibility. It's a life where I'm able to, travel a few times a year with my family to explore different cultures. It's a life where I live quite a simple life, but at the same time, I live a much more enjoyable life where I don't feel a lot of pressure to acquire things like,
Mhm.
more things, but I feel like I'm living a life where I am able to have a lot of options. I can say, do you know what? We're gonna, we're gonna go and live somewhere for 3 months, or we're
Yeah.
gonna, do various things that I've always wanted to do, or my wife has always wanted to do, or our
Mm.
kids have always wanted to do. Um, and also, in addition to that, I wanted that life of not just myself, but a life of generosity. So being able to give to other people without feeling like scarcity, like I don't have enough, and so I can't give. I wanted to have that ability to serve and give other people, whether it's my skills, my time, my experience, my money, my, anything in some capacity, be able to help other people without feeling limited. So
Do
all
you
those
know
elements.
why that's so important for you, that giving?
I believe very strongly that a good life is about service. It's about serving other people. I honestly believe that. I believe that when we live life as give first, many benefits come out of that, including personal well-being. You feel you're doing something, that's of service to other people. Is much more. It's not a self-centered agenda, but it's about reaching out and empowering other people. And there are other benefits, like giving has this thing where when you give something, there's always this reciprocity that's attached to giving, and that reciprocity isn't necessarily financial. Like I believe very strongly that if you show love to someone, you get love shown back to you. If you show respect to someone, you get respect shown back to you. So for me, I've always seen giving as a priority. In fact, I see giving as a lifestyle, because the more you have a given-centered life, the more you have a richer life, because like everywhere you go, people feel, you connect with people differently, you respect people differently, no matter their background, no matter like where they're from or anything. Like you just feel a much, you feel there's a humanity about giving that I think that I just feel is such an important part of our lives. And it connects a lot to love as well, because love is about giving. It's about just putting other people as a priority rather than just being self-centered. So for me, that's always been an important value that I wanted to prioritize in my life and journey.
Yeah, beautifully said. Yeah. So how I mean, for me, that really sounds like giving is maybe the most important ingredient in living a meaningful life. And that's also where I'm focusing on a lot, that how can you add value to this world and not just take value. And I think there needs to be some kind of a balance, else I think it's just not meaningful. And I can imagine that in order to give, that maybe people also think like, I do need to have resources then to give. But you also give beautiful examples of things you can give that are not related to money.
Oh yeah, so many. Because we are, as human beings, we're blessed with so many things around us. So I believe in a principle. The principle is use what you have in your hands. And every single person has something in their hands right now. Everybody, whether it's their ability to communicate or their ability to have a particular skill set, or maybe they've had an experience, or maybe they're good at encouraging other people, maybe they're good at giving advice. Like there's so many things that we all already have right now that has nothing to do with money. It's just wisdom, experience, skills. Time is another one. Like sometimes some people just want to have someone to listen to them. Not necessarily to say anything back, but just to listen. That's you giving, because you're giving of your time, which is your most valuable resource. You're giving that time. And some people just need companionship. They just need like someone to be around. That's another way of giving. So there's so much we can do that's beyond money. Even ideas is another one, because ideas are actually good ideas. Actually can create money, can create, many things. Connections, our networks is another way of giving. And now I know you, Emma. I can say I know somebody from the Netherlands, and and that way I've built the relationship. And one day if someone says, oh, well, someone from that, I can say, oh, I know Emma. that's me giving. That's me making a connection, a meaningful connection, and serving that person in a different way. So giving is has a much broader scope than we sometimes think. Because when you see giving, people think, oh, they think charity, they just think like money, giving money to charity,
right.
or they're like, oh, I don't know, but then giving is so much more, and giving is actually for the giver, not for the receiver. This is the thing, because when we give, I remember, and a good example, I used to offer mentoring to final year university students. And I just did it for free. And every year, the university, City University in London, they'd contact me every 3 to 6 months and say, hey, Ken, we've got this person who wants to maybe work in finance or banking or whatever. Can you please just have a chat and mentor them for 3 months? And I would say, yep, great, I'll do it. And so for me, what was very interesting, although I was the mentor in the relationship and the person is the mentee, he or she thought they were getting something from me. So I'd meet them, I'd buy them a coffee, we'd sit down, how's your career, how's your schooling, what are you struggling with, what's your ambition? I ask all these questions and we have a chat and they like make a note. But what they don't realize is that I'm actually getting more from the relationship, because like I'm actually learning. Like I'm actually, in this environment where I've met this new human being, and I'm having this experience of understanding how they think, how they process things, what their life outlook might be. And it helps me with my own life, thinking, about my own journey and where I think I'm going. So you see, that giving in that scenario was actually like both people benefiting at the same time. And for me, when I look back, I feel like he or she was actually sowing into my life, whereas like he or she thought I was sowing into their life. So it's like a circular thing.
And that makes me also think about, sometimes I hear that people are saying, oh yeah, but you already have so much money, not me, but about another person. When is it enough? And then what comes into my mind, well, you can maybe never have enough, because you can, if you have more and more, you can give more and more. But how do you think about that?
That's such an interesting question. You see, giving, when you talk about giving from a money perspective, is such an interesting idea, because some people say, when I become financially free, I would start to give. Yeah. But the true reality is that you will only do what you have gotten used to doing. So say, for example, if I make 100 euros a month, very low income, or 1,000 euros a month, and I'm like, this is my income. And if I'm able to, from that small amount of money, maybe give, I don't know, £10 or $10 or 10 euros, if I'm able to do it on my low income, I'm much more likely to be able to give when I have 100,000 euros, because the culture, you see, the internal culture of giving is already a part of who I am. It's a part of my life philosophy, or my own person, like who I am, So when people say, when is enough? When is money enough? That's actually a really valid question, because I think that, and this is why we talk about financial independence in our world. When I talk about financial independence, what I really mean is a stage of life where your income coming from, let's say, your different sources of income, or maybe your assets, is able to cover your monthly essential living expenses. Yeah. And you're giving yourself much more optionality by doing that. But the reason I love that journey of becoming financially independent is because it's about choosing to part of the journey is about choosing to live a much simpler life.
Mm-hmm.
And a much simpler life is a life of less acquisition, like less accumulation, and less like always wanting new things, because it's the new things we want all the time that keeps us chasing and chasing and chasing.
Yeah.
Now, you can keep earning more, and that's completely fine, provided you've got the heart right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because if you've got the heart right from the very beginning, which is that, you know what? Yes, I earn more, but the income is able to help my lifestyle, and it's able to help other people. I'm able to have so much more impact. Again, it comes back to the heart. If you're able to be that person, then invariably over time, you have more inflows coming your way because your heart's set in the right way. The way life is set. You know, there's this analogy of like a river, and so if people who give are like a river flowing through them, but people who don't give are like a stagnant pool of water. It's like the water flows in and stops.
Yeah.
Nothing happens. But when when the energy flows through you, there's much more momentum, there's much more opportunity, there's much more life happening.
Yeah.
But when the water flows and stops, nothing happens. Stagnation, like it just stops. So in the same way, the person who's able to let money flow through them will have more money coming in, because they know where to send the money. They know there's already a way of looking at money that means that they're able to tell the money where to go. You know, whereas a person who just hoards the money will just have inflow and stop. But that inflow will not be as much as that person who already has this ability to say, I'm a good manager of money. I know how much is enough for me. You know, I'm not trying to become like billions and billions. You know, I know like I've got a good life already, but at the same time, I also know that I can tell money where to go. I can tell money to go and serve this project or this cause or this, you know, opportunity or whatever. You know, so that's kind of how I hope that makes sense. But that's kind of how
definitely. Yeah, it's a beautiful metaphor. So you told in the beginning that you worked from 2017 to 2020 before you or in a company, I guess, before you decided to start the Humble Penny. But how did that go? Why did you make that decision?
Yeah, so I actually started working in 2006. So my career has been over 14 years. But in 2020, the reason why I made that decision was of the lockdown from COVID. So when we had in March 2020, the COVID situation was in the UK and stuff. And I felt like my life was colliding with so many things. So I had my job, which is I was working as chief financial officer for a venture capital business, a very demanding, very busy, very, very pressured job. I had my kids who were at home. So my wife and I had to start to homeschool our children whilst I was working in one room, but we had to homeschool in another room. Then I had the Humble Penny, which was taking off, and, you know, a lot of emails, demand, I had to create content, I had to do many things. Then I had my marriage, you know, I've been married now next month, 11 years. So, you know, I have my relationship to think about. Then I have myself, you know, my own mental health, my own, you know, all those things. So that period represented a period of huge challenge because, you know, it just felt too much. But before that, my wife and I had been working towards becoming financially independent ourselves. So we became financially independent in 2017. And we paid off our mortgage in the house we live in. And so that meant we had much more financial freedom, much more ability to decide what kind of work we wanted to do. So one of those big decisions was about my career. You know, I'd been working in finance. I trained as a chartered accountant. I'd worked my way up to become CFO, all these things. What should I do next? And so for me, at that stage of life, I decided that this was a time for me to take a bit of a risk and do something else, and maybe go out on my own and see what I've always had this desire to run my own business. Maybe this was the right time. So we had some savings and stuff, and we said, well, let's give this a go. So I had some conversations with my employer at the time, and I took the leap. It was a scary, scary, scary time, you know, especially given what was going on with the pandemic and COVID. But it's turned out to be the best thing I've ever done.
Really? Yeah. Why?
Yeah. Because I really enjoy what I do. I really, really do. And there's a lot of purpose to our work, a lot of purpose. Every day, our job is to serve other people through our content, through courses, through workshops, through like blog posts. And I never get to meet all these people from around the country, from around the world. I never ever meet them. Maybe I meet 0.001% of the people. Yeah. But that's more than enough, because I know we're having huge impacts from all the comments, all the emails, all the DMs, and, you know, so we know people's lives are being changed, and we feel called to do what we do. You know, I say we because I do it with my wife, you know, my wife, Mary. So we feel called to do what we do. And that for me, because I've always felt in my career that I lacked purpose in my work. I always felt like my work was very well paid, you know, 6-figure income, very well paid, but I lacked purpose. I felt like there was a hole in my being that was lacking. And if I was being true to myself, I needed to do something about it. Yeah. So
if people recognize this, the knowing that they're like maybe on the outside very successful, earning a lot of money, but in a job where they somewhere feel maybe this is not the right thing to do, or it's a lack of meaning. What kind of signals did you get that you knew something was lacking?
Yeah, so I was on a flight. The first big signal I had was I was on a flight from London to Philadelphia in America. And I was at around 36,000 feet. And I was looking out the window. And, you know, when you're on a flight, and I was by myself, I was going for work. It's very beautiful and very, like, just the views were spectacular. We're above the clouds. And it was a good time. I was reading a book at a time. And I was just thinking about my life and how I've got to where I am today and where I think I'm going with my life, you know. And I realized on that flight that a big part of my journey has been in kind of autopilot mode. I've done what people expect I would do, which is you do a degree in accounting or economics, you do a finance career, and you work your way up and blah, blah, blah. And on that flight, I felt a sense of, well, what if I did something else? You know, what is it I truly want for my life? I wasn't clear. I wasn't sure what that would be, but I knew that deep down I had a desire to do something that helped other people. So I called it the 2 Ps. It had to be purposeful, but it had to be profitable. I wanted those 2 things in what I did. And in the industry I worked in, which was venture capital, it was just about the profits. It's about returns. Yeah. And all our customers were high net worth, super high net worth, like lots of very rich people. But then when I looked around me, there were lots of very poor people, you know, people who are struggling, family members, friends, and just people, you know, lots of people struggling. And so I kind of felt this thing. I was like, I feel like I'm at a crossroads in my life where it's either I do something now and I try something else, or I'll forever just live in just this regret of I've been too fearful and not brave, or after, so I think a seed was sown on that flight. I knew that something had to change, but I didn't know how it would change. I didn't know like what would be the next step. Is it too late for me? Am I too old now? What should am I being a millennial? Am I like trying to be like, follow my passion? I didn't know what I wanted. I just knew I've had a good career so far and well paid. What's wrong with that? Why do you want something else? Why don't you just do your job like everybody else?
Yeah.
But that wasn't enough for me. I just felt I needed to start something. So I then said to myself, okay, here's the experiment. I'm going to find 2 hours per day, and I'm going to use 2 hours per day to do something else whilst I have my job, and just see what happens. And so I used my 2 hours per day to, at the time I was reading a lot of American blogs, and I was like, oh, okay, this blogging thing sounds really quite cool. Maybe I should start writing something about my journey, about my life experiences, just to, as a family man, as an immigrant, as a married man, a black man in London, trying to make it. Maybe there's people who might want to hear from a guy like me, So I started to write my thoughts down on this blog. I spoke to my wife. She's like, okay, sounds like a good idea. Are you sure you can do it whilst also doing your job? I said, yeah, maybe just 2 hours a day. I can maybe watch less TV. We can maybe put some more time into doing it. So we brainstormed the name together. We sat down. We're like, what should we call it? And the name, The Humble Penny, came up. We were like thinking of different words and putting together different words. And we searched on GoDaddy, and it was available for .com. So I paid 99p. I paid for the name. I was like, yes, got the name. And I started looking for somebody to help to design a website. I went on Fiverr, Upwork. I was looking for someone. I found this woman in America, in Florida. She said, pay me $250 and I will do your website. I said, oh, good. So, and then I paid her. We started to think of what should our colors be? What should, like, the message, the tagline, and this is how it started. And then in December 2017, so all this stuff happened 7 months between like that flight and the website. It's like 7 months.
Yeah.
And I started writing stuff and just writing. I said to myself, I'll write 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 2 hours a day, writing. And I was very bad with my writing. My English was terrible. I didn't do very well in English with my schooling. So I had this lack of confidence about writing. So I said, well, I'll use like spell checker just to make sure I get all my stuff right. So I started writing. And then after a few months of writing, I started to get some like people were like, oh, this sounds interesting. And, and I was like, oh, okay. And after about a year of writing, I got contacted by the BBC, and they were like, oh, we want to come on, like, we're doing a documentary for like people, about money and financial independence and stuff. And somehow we found one of your blogs, and we'll meet you at a park in London just to talk about it. I was like, okay, fine. So I showed up and I talked in this documentary, and it was actually a really big thing. And it turned out to be very popular. And then from there, another media company were like, oh, we've just seen the BBC thing. We want to talk to you about something. And then that started to open doors. Yeah. And this is how I've got to where I am today. Now running this as a full business with a team and with my wife, and and it's now my job. It all started by just being on that flight.
Wow.
And just thinking, well, what do I really want for my life? But the thing I noticed that's very interesting is that it's using skills that I have that I had developed in the finance world, my abilities, and then combining that with just so it's using the, I guess, talents that I've acquired, but combining that with this area of interest and passion where I want to help people become better with money,
Yeah.
And I think that combination of those two things of talent and passion and demand, so that area of money is an area of demand. I think those three ingredients, talent, passion, and demand, meant that it took off,
Yeah.
So, because you could have passion, but no talent, and nothing happens because you're like, oh, you give up. But provided you've got the ability, like a transferable skill or some work experience or something that gives you some, just gives you something more, some confidence in this area, then, it has much more potential to work out.
Yeah, beautiful. And so would you say that the hole you felt, the lack of meaning, is completely filled now?
I would say that it's filled much more than I ever imagined. I don't feel I've got any whole lack of meaning right now at all. But what's interesting going on this journey, being where I am now, is that I already feel that I will be doing even more things in the future, much more like what I'm doing today. Like, for example, I always have other ideas, I want to do some other cool things, some fun things, but things that are purposeful and profitable. It has to have those two P's.
Yeah.
And so I feel like there's a bit more of a formula now, and I've acquired a bit more confidence because I've done something that has worked, and I've done it now for 5 years. So I feel like I've grown a lot as an individual. I've grown a lot as a leader, or I've just grown so much more in my technical experience, as well as knowledge, as well as practical business experience, as well as emotional experience of the journey of trying to make a business successful. So I feel like all those things together will lead to more, almost a higher level at some point in the future. But it remains completely unknown. The main thing is that I'm actually having fun. That's the main thing. I'm having fun, I'm having impact, and I'm enjoying it. That's the main, for me personally, that's the main thing.
That's beautiful. Is there one last thing you want to say to the listeners, a tip or an insight, or just something you want to share to close it off?
Yeah, so one thing I want to talk about is about this concept of life design. I always say to people, imagine you've got a blank canvas, like an A3 sheet of paper, and you wanted to ask, and you said to yourself, what could my life look like 10 years from now? What could my life look like? And you forget all your problems right now. You forget all your boss and everything that's happening, like the world. You just forget everything, but you just simply write down or draw, like a sketch, what element of my life, what would it look like? Like, where are you living? How many hours a day are you working? What kind of house do you live in? Is it a flat? Is it a 2-bed? Is it a 4-bed? Where, what's the detail? What type of work are you doing? Are you working for somebody else in corporate world? Are you working for yourself? Do you have children? Do you, what do you do when you wake up? And what do you do all day to when you sleep, right? These are small questions. And what hobbies will you have, right? These are small questions, but they're so important because they help you to they ignite something in your imagination, and they help you to dream more. Because I think we've all, a lot of us have stopped dreaming. We've stopped looking forward to things in our lives. And I think for me personally, I find dreaming to be such an important thing, because dreams connect very well with vision. It's like, what's your life's vision? Like, what do you see in the future? And this exercise makes it very visual, because then you could say, do you know what, Ken, 10 years from now, I want to only work from 9 to 3 o'clock, and I want to work 4 days a week. And I want to, because then the minute you say the words, the minute you're able to articulate it, you are starting to create it. Because a lot of our world, sometimes I walk out onto the street and I look at everything I can see, and I say to myself, everything here was created by someone.
Yeah.
A man or a woman. Someone made a decision that meant that what I'm looking at now got created. But what's the beautiful thing about the future is that the future is an empty land that no one has created on. So for each person, the future is still yet to be built. Like there's nothing, it's completely blank. It's like a blank. It's like, imagine being in the Netherlands. I don't know what your main city is. Imagine like the main city with no building. It's like completely empty. That's the future. That's like London with nothing, So we now can decide what gets built in that future. And for me, that keeps me very excited, because, that can influence every aspect of our lives, our relationships, our health, our careers, our businesses, just anything you want to do can be done if you choose to do it, Yeah. So for me, that helps me a lot, because then even on days when I feel down, or I feel like, today's been difficult, I first of all ask myself, what am I grateful for? So gratitude is an antidote for optimism. So I feel like, wow, I'm grateful for these things. And then next I say to myself, what am I looking forward to? What's coming? And I'm able to say, well, actually, in the future, this is going to happen. This is the life I'm trying to create. This is the impact I'm trying to have. And those elements just, for me, just help me stay very excited about what I'm doing and where I think I'm going. The future seems much more visible because I've imagined it,
Right.
And anyway, I hope that helps somebody out there.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. This has been fun.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode and you got inspired. Don't you want to miss any episode anymore? Then subscribe to the Money and Meaning podcast by clicking the follow or subscribe button. I would also really appreciate it if you could leave a review in the app you used to listen to this episode. Do you have the feeling that you also want to discover how you can lead a lighter, happier, healthier, and more meaningful life? Check out my offer on my website. You find the link in the show notes. I offer everything in English, and online is definitely an option. And who knows, we might meet each other soon.